What's going on, guys? Andrew of New Bar Gaming back here today, and we're going to be covering some Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains episode 73 and 74 previews, as well as a couple more episode titles we got for episodes 75 and 76. Let's go ahead and jump right into this. So episode 73, we've got the title for The Blade of Light That Cuts Through Despair. During his duel with Playmaker, Bowman activates Storm Access and obtains a new Hydra Drive. Playmaker is then inflicted with heavy damage. I then tells Playmaker that he has prepared something in advance, just in case. So the more I thought about this episode title after having let it sink in, having read it the first time in some previews we got sometime late last week, the blade that cuts through the darkness, the despair, almost reminds me of sort of like one of the Code Talker cards that Yusaku would have been wielding. We don't necessarily have any other hints towards that, but if we've seen all of the various Code Talkers that he's used, every single one of them has used a blade, and they have been a significant aspect of his deck without necessarily being his ace creature, and we haven't had one of those introduced in quite some time, whereas we have had different like new Cyberse dragons. So maybe the little trick I's going to pull is he's going to be like, hey, so I kind of got this other card that might really help you, and it's kind of a callback to a lot of the cards that we started off winning a lot of our duels with, and that it is tied once more to that kind of series of Code Talkers that he had been using for a long time. So, but that's like what I get from the title. Dropping into the description of that episode a little bit, one thing that stands out to me now that I'm like remembering it a little bit better is they seem to make a very good point of ensuring that Soulburner passes on to Yusaku the same program that will allow them to log out should anything go awry. And to me, that almost spells out that the writers intend for this duel to maybe be a no result, and that's the reason they wanted to make sure on screen Yusaku got that way to get an auto logout from Link Vrains, because if this duel starts to go completely against him, he can basically just force himself out of the system, and then Bowman can't really do anything to him from there, at least to our knowledge of how like the whole Link Vrains to real world connections work as of right now. So if that is the case, Yusaku finds himself backed into too much of a corner. It could even be a case where like the final attack is coming for him, and then I is like, hey, don't forget we had this program, and then like smashes a button or something, and then it triggers Kusanagi's program, and they're logged out of the system. Almost similar to what we saw happen with Yusei's D-Wheel giving out during his first duel with Kiryu, when he was just about to lose, the D-Wheel gave out, prevented him from technically being dealt that final blow, which arguably is the reason that he survived through that duel. Now, Kiryu also did decide to spare his life, but in some ways, I would definitely claim that maybe his D-Wheel was also trying to protect him based on a technicality, depending on how you want to look at all that. So maybe this is Yusaku's kind of out to facing a loss. That's something I would personally really like, and I feel maybe a nice compromise between needing to necessarily show that your main character is losing to a main antagonist at this point, but also showing him some weakness. It's not going to set your story back super dramatically in that he likely won't lose eye and such, as, Bowman's essentially threatening to take him should he win. But at the same time, it can humanize Yusaku, because for all intents and purposes, he did suffer a loss there. The other thing that kind of heads in the direction of him maybe still losing this duel is the fact that they do seem to cut away in the next episode description to an entirely different subject, which it would kind of make sense to do if you just watch your main character suffer a really significant loss, but it makes sense to kind of turn your focus away from them for a little while, build some suspense as to where they are, where they're heading, and at the same time let that kind of settle in and be digested by your audience some. Now, the other thing that stands out about this is I definitely is the one kind of concealing a secret weapon that he's going to show to Playmaker. I don't particularly lean towards it being Kusanagi's thing, though I do see it being possible that maybe they just mean that, I reminds Playmaker, hey, we have this program that can bail us out. I find it a lot more likely I's going to present a card, and if Kusanagi's program does end the duel, that's more just kind of a last minute bailout type of thing after I's secret weapon. I do find it still very likely that I's secret weapon is going to be, remember that thing Revolver did with, the synchro summoning and tuning and all that stuff? I've been kind of working on that a little bit, so here's that new Cyberse Dragon card that we've been talking a lot about here lately. Cyberse Quantum Dragon. So that would be really cool to see that in action. Though I do believe if Yusaku's going to end up summoning Cyberse Quantum Dragon in this duel, the odds of him losing, I believe, would be pretty low. It's very rare we see a main character summon a new ace monster and still lose a duel. I mean, there have been examples in the past of other characters that aren't main characters across the various shows that we've had summon new cards and still manage to lose their duel somehow. Look at all the various characters that what's-his-face, Yuya ends up dueling towards the end of Arc 5. All those were other characters. They weren't evil or anything. A lot of them summoned new ace monsters, especially like Shun, when they were dueling against Yuya, and they still end up losing to him. It's just the reality of things. Sometimes we do get these awesome new cards, and it doesn't necessarily equate to a win. So hard to say here. We also do have Bowman throwing a new card into the mix with the Hydra Drives. Once more, I stand by. If Yusaku's going to lose a duel, it's probably going to have to be here. Part of the reason that I really kind of wish he either ends in a no result that was going against his favor, or it does end up in a loss, just because I really do want to see him humanized some. So moving right along from that, we have episode 74, which takes a dramatic turn away from kind of the main focus of our story that we've had going on in terms of like the Ignis's and Yusaku's company, and like kind of the Knights of Hanoi, that little camp that was going on, and basically Wendy's hideout. This kind of turns our focus totally away from that. It's going to be titled The Imprisoned Ignis. Earth rescued Aqua, who was imprisoned by someone, and learned the truth about the Cyber's world's destruction. However, GO ONIZUKA, who was ordered to capture the Ignises, then appears and attacks the two of them. In order to protect Aqua, Earth begins a duel against GO. Now, in order for me to actually talk about this too much, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the episode titles for 75 and 76, because I think they play a very big role when trying to analyze this summary. So following up with that, we do have episode 75 that's going to be titled The Ogre Inside One's Heart. And then we have episode 76, Awakened Memories. Now, this seems to be spelling out, to me at least, kind of a progression of Go's character remembering who he was and who he was supposed to be. Not just because one of the episode titles is Awakened Memories, but if you notice, episode 75 is titled The Ogre Inside One's Heart. What's the deck Go used to use when he was a much less edgy influence, when a lot of the reason he dueled was to inspire these children from an orphanage and everything else? He was using the Goki deck, which essentially most of them are ogres, and he was using them, he was being an entertainment duelist. He was basically doing everything he could to create this maximum possible situation, to create this image of a hero for his audiences to watch, and he actually kind of lived that out for some people, such as Soulburner. Even though he didn't necessarily manage to take down Revolver with his own hands, people like Soulburner still viewed him as a hero of Link Vrains, and it's sounding like throughout this duel with Earth that maybe he's going to be remembering that. Moving on to episode 76 is title here, we have Awakened Memories. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting for me. This is possible that it's just, this is kind of an existential crisis for Go. He remembers, wait a second, I'm not supposed to be this somewhat antagonistic person who's hunting down Ignises. I'm supposed to be this level-headed hero that the general public can look up to, can view as kind of this person that they can hold on a pedestal. I'm supposed to remind them that you can turn the odds back. Part of the reason that he would allow himself to get pinned in those duels a lot of times, I think, was not only just to create entertainment, but to act as a symbol to people that just because you're buried into a corner doesn't mean you've necessarily lost. But the other thing that kind of stands out about this is, even though playmakers seem to assume that Earth was tied to Spectre in terms of Ignises, we do know for sure that within this duel, Go is going to be dueling against Earth, right? So that's definitely going to trigger some conversations between them. And then we have a title like Awakened Memories. We've seen people's memories can very much get altered within the show, or it seems like it's not beyond the realm of possibility. Every time we turn around, I swear new powers are being added to what programming and such can do within this. So I would definitely say it's very possible someone's memories could be shifted and altered. We know Go to be an orphan. That also falls into the category of someone who, would have an Ignis paired to them. So between him having an orphan, the possibility of altered memories, and the fact that now he's suddenly dueling Earth, will likely be speaking to him a little bit. And we have this episode titled Awakened Memories, and Go's Goki deck is Earth attributed. This spells out to me that there's definitely a chance that maybe GO ONIZUKA is tied to one of the Ignises after all, being Earth. At which rate, I would be overwhelmingly joyed with that. I think regardless of whether Spectre's tied to, Earth as the Ignis or not, Spectre's going to end up playing a big role in the show. Now, the only problem with this theory is Spectre's obviously tied to one of the Ignises, and if he's not tied to Earth, that means he's either tied to Windy, because we don't know whose Windy's is for sure, or Aqua's. At which rate, both of those are really, really forced. Versus Earth, Earth's is kind of a toss-up at this point. We've more or less assumed that it's probably tied to Spectre. But I do think this does indicate there is a little bit of a chance that the writers have a plot twist in mind for us, that maybe somehow Go is tied to the Earth Ignis. Or maybe they form some kind of a bond or something, because Go's deck, much like Spectre's, is Earth attributed. If you look at the build of Earth, it also resembles Go a lot more than it resembles someone like Spectre. So I wouldn't put a lot of money behind this theory, but I would certainly say there is some possibility there. I'm very excited to see Aqua actually on screen and interacting in present time here as well. It seems like she's going to be explaining to the Earth Ignis what is happening, what's going on. You know, lightning essentially destroyed this world to do whatever, assuming that she does have accurate information and they didn't just write the episode 73 summary or 74 summary, basically saying that she thinks she knows what she's doing rather than what she actually found out. It does say that she found the truth, but it's always possible that from her perspective it's the truth, but she's been fed false information. But I would say that's very, very unlikely. So for the most part, she's probably going to be telling him how, look, lightning destroyed this, maybe humans aren't such an enemy, etc., etc. We do know she was siding with humans, much like Flame back when all the Ignises were talking within Cyber's world. So it sounds like we're going to have the situation that the ending of the show, ending 4 that was recently added, seemed to imply, which is going to be Earth, Aqua, and Flame all working together against Lightning and Windy. So with all that being said, guys, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Are you excited for where these episodes are coming? Are you as happy as I am to see Go Onizuka maybe getting some serious character development, some serious progression, especially considering his character seems to get a little bit stale and seems a little bit underdeveloped at this point for the role he's supposed to fill? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe down below. And if not, constructive criticism is always welcome, and I'll catch you guys next time with some more Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains content.